This is the story of two convicted prisoners who satisfy an old woman's desires, working in the prison to get help for their escape plan. The movie opens with Catherine Scott, who is an attorney going to the state's largest prison to interview a 50-year-old lady, Tilly Mitchell. She works as the head of the sewing department at the facility. Catherine asks Tilly various questions, but it seems that she's more interested in knowing about the relationship of Tilly with the two inmates who escaped the prison. Tilly denies any relationship with the prisoners and tries to make her sure that she is enjoying a healthy relationship and steady life with her husband, who drives her to work every morning. Tilly manages the sewing department of the state's largest prison, and the workers enjoy working with her because of her cheerful nature and kind attitude. Among the workers, there is someone who loves her more than anyone else. He is David and is working as shift supervisor. She often cheats on her husband by enjoying her time with David in a secluded room of the department. She thinks that no one knows about their relationship, but one of David's friends, Richard, notices this romantic affair with interest, hoping to use it one day. However, when guard Palmer asks him about the rumors concerning the couple's relationship, Richard pretends he doesn't know anything about them. On the other hand, he warns David that they are being watched. Richard tells him that her husband will find out everything about them. David takes his advice seriously and begins to avoid Tilly, fearing that people will find out and he'll get into trouble. Meanwhile, Richard continues to observe them while attending to his own affairs. Since he has been in the prison for many years, he has earned respect among both inmates and guards. He often spends time with Palmer, and they spend nights in conversation. Being a friend, Palmer tries to take care of him by allowing Richard to get everything he needs for a comfortable life in prison. Tilly's husband works at the same prison, and soon the gossip about his wife's affair with a young criminal reaches him. He tries not to believe, but when the rumors keep on coming, the doubt begins to grow. At the weekend, he takes Tilly to watch a movie in the cinema and gently asks her about her relationship with David. She realizes that rumors have reached her husband, but she manages to make him feel guilty, calling accusations dirty and hurtful. A few days later, David asks Tilly for forgiveness for his abruptness and avoiding her all the time. He requests her to start over, and she gladly accepts him back into her arms, but she is unaware that Richard is observing them continuously. Meanwhile, Richard also begins to show attention towards Tilly, understanding that it could benefit him with his plans. Tilly recounts all of this during her interrogation with the attorney. Catherine asks her question about whether any of the escaped prisoners gave her any gift, but this makes Tilly nervous. We are taken in the past again, where a few months earlier, upon learning that cells were going to be searched, Palmer asks Richard to hide the things like his paint that are prohibited in the prison. Palmer opens a maintenance tunnel and asks Richard to stay there. After the search, Richard comes to his place and realizes that the inspectors didn't move the bed or look behind it. This prompts Richard to revive his escape plans, which have long troubled him. Later, Richard begins to visit the maintenance corridor quite often because he is planning to use it for the escape. Then he visits David and shares his idea with him. The young man is not ready to do it, understanding that if they're caught, they'll be transferred to the worst block of the prison. The next day, Richard asks David to arrange a flashlight for their escape plan with the help of her girlfriend. In this way, he tries to tell him that he knows about their relationship. Soon, the news of the couple's relationship reaches the management, and they remove David from work in the sewing department. Later, he's transferred to another block. Tilly gets angry at everyone for taking away her only friend, and she refuses to work with other staff, hoping that David will be transferred back. Despite her complaints, a new shift supervisor is placed in the department. Meanwhile, she writes a letter to David and asks Richard to deliver it. Richard delivers the letter to David and insists that he write back to Tilly. He again tries to convince David, but he again refuses to involve his girlfriend and still doesn't want to participate in the escape. Seizing the opportunity, Richard begins to spend time with Tilly, asking about her family and other affairs of her life. He makes her sure that he will always stand up for her in front of other inmates. He also tells her a sad story about his daughter, hoping to get sympathy. Moved by his words, Tilly calls Richard's daughter in the evening and introduces herself as a good friend of Richard. She tells her about her father's life in prison. With the passage of time, her problems at work continue to grow. The management notices her attitude toward the new shift supervisor and hints that it's affecting productivity. She's asked to improve her performance by showing more attention to the work. When Richard learns about Tilly's call, he realizes that the woman is hooked and can be used for the plan. Meanwhile, David is unable to adjust himself in the new block and gets into fights with other inmates, resulting in damaging his nerves. Moreover, when he gets a call from his home, he is told that his mother has refused to give an application for his transfer to another prison in the warmer regions. This makes him more annoyed, and he makes up his mind to be part of Richard's escape plan. To get more familiar with Tilly, Richard gives her a painting depicting her dogs. This touches her so much that she immediately invites him to the secluded room and kneels before him. In this way, she starts a new affair with Richard, unaware that everything is merely a plot created by Richard for a momentary pleasure and the upcoming escape. The new affair gives Tilly new goals, and she visits a beauty salon dreaming of impressing her new friend. Later that day, Richard asks Palmer to return David to the neighboring cell. Palmer tells him that he can't do anything in this regard, but is willing to turn a blind eye to certain violations. Meanwhile, Tilly visits a hardware store to buy some tools for Richard so he can paint a picture for her. When she sees the list, she's surprised that Richard needs 2 pairs of glasses and metal hacksaws for this, but she doesn't ask questions to avoid spoiling her happiness. Richard starts working on his plan while Tilly hides the items in meat. Later, Richard hires someone to set a cell on fire, so David gets transferred back. Everything is working according to the plan. Tilly sends the package with the meat through Palmer, and David moves back next to his old friend. In the evenings, the men saw through the wall behind the bed to access the maintenance tunnel from their cells. And during the day, Richard continues to persuade Tilly to bring everything they need for the plan. Later at night, Palmer and his wife invite Tilly and her husband to a bar, where he warns Tilly that from now on, he will not deliver packages to Richard. Meanwhile, the men make a way out of their cells, but they are still within the prison grounds. The next day at work, both of them try to analyze the building of the prison and try to find out the directions they need to move next. After having some encounters with Tilly in the secluded room, Richard begins to face problems with her because she suddenly starts feeling guilty and misses David. At home, her husband finds a painting given to her by Richard. Suspicions grow in his mind, and he decides to confront the man who is having an affair with his wife. Meanwhile, Richard visits his friend and admits that he is having a relationship with her girlfriend, Tilly. Moreover, he asks David to give him a shirt so she can feel better while spending time with him and imagine herself in the company of both friends. The next day, Tilly's husband comes to the sewing department to sort things out. But the clever older man manages to come up with a good excuse. He says that Tilly ordered the painting as a gift for her husband on their wedding anniversary. Later, Richard tells Tilly about her husband's visit, but doesn't tell her everything about the encounter. At the end of the day, David meets his former lover in the prison yard and gives her the shirt. In his cell, David checks the path again and discovers that a wall is blocking them. He loses faith in the success of the plan, but his older companion tries to motivate him to stick to the plan. He tells him that it's just an obstacle they can overcome. Later, David takes a sledgehammer and descends into the shaft at night to break through the wall, carving a path to freedom. When David is working on the wall, Richard continues to entertain his girlfriend to maintain a reliable ally on the outside. When David finishes the work each day just before dawn, David paints over the secret passage. On the other hand, despite having an affair with Richard, Tilly doesn't forget about David and sends him cute photos and writes love letters. A few days later, they face the final wall, but it's the strongest and made with concrete. According to David's calculations, it will take at least 5 years to get through it. His hopes start fading again, but Richard motivates him by telling him about how'll end up in Mexico after the escape. The next day, they decide to tell Tilly about their plans and invite her to go with them. When he meets her, Richard tells her about their escape plan and asks her to join them. Surprisingly, she becomes happy and starts dreaming about fleeing to Mexico with both of her beloved men. David continues to break down the wall, while Tilly's life becomes increasingly difficult. Her husband tries to restore their relationship several times, but she accuses him of betrayal. Her son asks her to focus on the family more, but she doesn't listen. She doesn't care about the family anymore. Instead, she dreams of fleeing the country with her new love. One day, she finally decides to give up her life with her husband and help both criminals escape. However, when David is almost through the final wall, he suddenly has doubts about whether Tilly will come through for them when the time comes. Meanwhile, Tilly contemplates their offer of escaping to Mexico together, torn between the excitement of the escape and her guilt over abandoning her family. Ultimately, the men's fate rests in the hands of their conflicted lover as the story reaches its dramatic climax.